Michael Jackson, famously hailed as the King of Pop, remains one of the most influential figures in music history. His groundbreaking performances, chart-topping hits, and iconic dance moves transformed the entertainment industry, leaving behind a legacy celebrated across generations. Even those born after his prime can recognize his signature moonwalk and timeless songs. Yet, beneath the dazzling lights and adoration, darker controversies began to shadow his reputation. By the late 1980s, allegations and scandals surfaced, sparking debates that continue to this day. Jackson's story is thus one of brilliance, complexity, and enduring cultural fascination. Unveiling the shadows of Michael Jackson's mansion. Influential people like Michael Jackson hid some truth about themselves, and some of these were too twisted. That was why a group of 4 people decided to sneak into Michael Jackson's abandoned mansion with a mission to uncover his grim past. Unfortunately, this group was still caught off guard by the number of discoveries they made in one night. Unanswered questions. The story begins with curiosity, a curiosity fueled not by fame, but by unanswered questions. Michael Jackson, celebrated as the King of Pop, was an icon whose music shaped generations, yet his life was shrouded in mystery. The extravagant estate he left behind after his death seemed to stand as a relic of both glory and secrecy. For the 4 explorers, this mansion was not just a physical space, but a gateway into the untold stories of a man whose public brilliance often conflicted with private rumors. Heavy air inside the mansion. When they first crossed the wrought iron gates and crept up the long driveway, silence pressed against them. The air inside the mansion felt heavy, as if the walls themselves remembered. Elaborate chandeliers gathered dust, mirrors stood clouded, and portraits of Jackson smiled eerily from the dim corridors. At first, the group found themselves marveling at the grandeur. Rooms filled with forgotten costumes, gold records, and stage props. But quickly, their awe shifted into unease. Behind the spectacle lay whispers of darker truths. Journals and personal notes. One of the first rooms they uncovered was filled with stacks of journals and personal notes. These scribbled pages revealed a man both obsessed with perfection and haunted by insecurities. They found sketches of imagined worlds, childhood fantasies, intertwined with fears of betrayal and loneliness. These writings painted a picture of a genius at war with himself, someone who sought escape from reality, yet could never outrun it. Videotapes and recordings. The deeper they went, the stranger the discoveries became. In a hidden chamber behind a bookshelf, they stumbled upon videotapes and recordings. While some captured rehearsals and behind-the-scenes glimpses of his artistry, others hinted at personal struggles, moments where Jackson's charisma faded into silence, his eyes revealing exhaustion and paranoia. The contrast between the performer adored by millions and the man who lived in shadows was startling. Letters and documents. Perhaps the most unsettling find was a collection of artifacts tied to his controversies. Letters from legal advisors, documents sealed away, and press clippings carefully preserved spoke volumes. They revealed a man hyper-aware of his image and desperate to maintain control over how the world perceived him. Whether these objects reflected guilt, fear, or simple precaution remained unclear, but their presence made the explorers shiver. Tapestry of contradictions. By the time the night ended, the group left the mansion not with answers, but with more questions. Michael Jackson's abandoned home did not simply reveal a grim past, but rather a tapestry of contradictions. It showcased the brilliance of an artist who reshaped music and dance, but also the torment of a man trapped between fame and infamy. Flawed man behind the spotlight. The mansion became less of a haunted place and more of a mirror, reflecting how the world often elevates its icons while overlooking the complex, flawed humans behind the spotlight. The group realized they had not merely discovered relics of Michael Jackson's life, but it also uncovered the uncomfortable truth that legends are never just legends, they are people, as complicated and conflicted as the rest of us. The Enigma of Neverland Ranch. Michael Jackson's ranch was located in Los Alamos, California, 2,700 acres of sprawling land that took him 15 years to develop into one of the most unusual celebrity homes in history. Known as Neverland Ranch, the estate became a reflection of Jackson's deepest desires, fantasies, and contradictions. With its private amusement park, zoo of exotic animals, and fairy tale architecture, Neverland was unlike anything the world had ever seen. But beyond its spectacle, the question lingers. Was this dreamland truly built for children, or was there a more complicated truth hidden beneath its whimsical surface? Reclaiming his childhood. For Jackson, Neverland represented a chance to reclaim the childhood he felt was stolen by fame. From an early age, his life revolved around rehearsals, recording studios, and the pressures of performance. While other kids enjoyed simple pleasures, Jackson was on stage, carrying the weight of his family's career and later, the expectations of millions worldwide. Neverland became his attempt to build the childhood he never had, a place of laughter, play, and innocence. Carousel rides, roller coasters, cotton candy stands, and a private cinema all spoke to his yearning for youthful joy. Children were at the heart of Neverland. Jackson frequently invited groups of underprivileged kids, cancer patients, and young fans to spend days at the ranch. For many of them, the estate felt like paradise, a world where worries vanished and dreams came alive. To supporters, this was proof of Jackson's generosity and genuine care. They argued that Neverland embodied his philosophy that children carried purity, wonder, and the hope of a better world. The controversies that engulfed Neverland. Yet the story of Neverland cannot be told without acknowledging the controversies that engulfed it. Allegations of inappropriate behavior began surfacing in the early 1990s, with Neverland often cited as the backdrop. Critics saw the ranch not as a sanctuary, but as a stage where innocence was manipulated. Media outlets cast it as a place of suspicion, with each amusement ride and hidden room scrutinized for sinister implications. These accusations turned Neverland into a symbol of duality, joy and fear, innocence and scandal. A gift or a facade. As investigations unfolded, Jackson's intentions came under fierce debate. Was Neverland truly his altruistic gift to children, or was it a carefully constructed facade to mask darker impulses? Supporters pointed to decades of charitable work and testimonies from families who experienced only kindness at the ranch. Detractors highlighted secrecy, unusual patterns of behavior, and the blurred lines between childlike fantasy and adult responsibility. The truth became nearly impossible to separate from the myths swirling around Jackson's life. Lost and never regained. In 2005, after Jackson's acquittal on charges related to child molestation, Neverland never regained its magic. He stopped living there, and the once vibrant estate fell into neglect, later sold and remodeled. Today, Neverland exists less as a physical place and more as a cultural symbol. To some, it remains a dreamland that represented the innocence Jackson longed for. To others, it is a cautionary tale about blurred boundaries, unchecked power, and the danger of idolizing celebrities. Ultimately, Neverland Ranch embodies the enigma of Michael Jackson himself. Brilliant yet troubled, imaginative yet secretive, adored yet distrusted. Whether his intentions were pure or tainted, Neverland remains a haunting reminder that even the most magical places can carry shadows. The Dark Secrets of Neverland Ranch. Neverland was a French country structure with its own train station where visitors could ride into a whimsical world of attractions. The train wound through lush grounds, leading to a 50-seat movie theater, a stone bridge, a 4-acre lake, a 5-foot waterfall, amusement rides, and even a zoo filled with exotic animals. To a child, it must have seemed like paradise, a dream come to life where every corner promised fun and wonder. Yet when a group of daring explorers broke into the ranch years later, their discoveries painted a far more unsettling picture. What they found sent shivers down their spines. Stumbling upon rooms. At first, the group was enchanted by the remnants of Neverland's former glory. Faded posters of film classics hung in the theater, and the once proud carousel stood frozen, its painted horses gathering dust. But as they ventured deeper, innocence gave way to unease. They stumbled upon rooms that seemed out of place, spaces that suggested something beyond playfulness. A hidden collection. One of the most disturbing discoveries was a hidden collection of photographs and magazines locked away in a cabinet. While some depicted harmless images of childhood and fantasy, others were more troubling, hinting at an obsession with innocence that felt less whimsical and more obsessive. The explorers debated whether these items reflected mere eccentricity or something darker, but the ambiguity alone was enough to chill them. Room filled with mannequins. Another unsettling room contained mannequins dressed in elaborate costumes. Arranged in lifelike poses, they created a sense of being watched. Some were staged in childlike scenarios, sitting at desks, playing pretend, which gave the group an eerie impression, as though Jackson had attempted to freeze childhood moments in time. Dust and cobwebs only heightened the macabre atmosphere, making the mannequins appear more like forgotten specters than decorations. The narrow passage. Perhaps the most haunting find was inside the movie theater. Behind the screen, they uncovered a narrow passage leading to a small, windowless room. It was sparsely furnished, with only a chair and a locked chest. Inside the chest were videotapes and documents, many unlabeled, their contents unknown. The explorers dared not play them, but the mere existence of such hidden recordings stirred deep unease. The empty cages. The zoo, once bustling with exotic animals, had long since fallen silent, but remnants remained. Cages and enclosures sat empty, their paint peeling and metal rusting. The explorers described the area as ghostly, once a place of laughter and fascination, now a graveyard of forgotten dreams. Standing near the abandoned habitats, they could almost hear echoes of the past, a stark reminder of how quickly fantasy can decay into something haunting. The Labyrinth of Secrets. By the time the group left Neverland, their perception of it had changed entirely. What had once seemed like a wonderland for children now appeared as a labyrinth of secrets. The objects they uncovered blurred the line between innocence and obsession, joy and unease. Neverland, in the end, was not simply an amusement park or a playground. It was a reflection of Michael Jackson himself, brilliant yet troubled, imaginative yet unsettling. For the group of explorers, the magic they expected was replaced with shadows, leaving them to wonder if Neverland was ever truly paradise at all. The ominous welcome of Neverland. The first thing that welcomed the group was an eerie door knocker attached to the old blue wooden doors. Its design appeared to be two children, perhaps both male, poised as if about to touch their lips. This unsettling image seemed out of place on a home once advertised as a paradise for kids. To the explorers, it felt like a premonition, a quiet warning of the disturbing discoveries waiting beyond those doors. Neverland Ranch, once hailed as Michael Jackson's wonderland of joy and innocence, was about to reveal a darker, more haunting side. Beyond the threshold. Crossing the threshold, the group immediately felt the weight of the silence. Dust covered the ornate hallway, and broken light fixtures dangled overhead. Yet the door knocker's image lingered in their minds, as though the children etched into the metal were watching them. The deeper they went, the more they realized this mansion was not simply abandoned. It was preserved, almost staged, like a place where time had stopped. A shrine to childhood. In the parlor, they encountered relics of Jackson's obsession with youth. Child-sized furniture, toy chests spilling over with dolls, and portraits depicting children in angelic poses. On their own, these objects might have seemed innocent, even whimsical. But placed together in such abundance, they created an atmosphere that felt suffocating. The explorers noted how the decor seemed less like a playground and more like a shrine to childhood, unsettling in its intensity. Silence, secrecy, and innocence. As they continued, they stumbled upon a hallway filled with mannequins. Some were dressed in glittering costumes, while others were posed in school uniforms or playful attire. Their glassy eyes reflected the flashlight beams, giving the illusion of life. One mannequin's hand was lifted, as though trying to hush the explorers, a chilling echo of the door knocker's silent gesture. The symbolism was too stark to ignore. Silence, secrecy, and innocence all abound together in a disturbing tableau. Enter the study room. The most shocking discovery awaited them behind a locked room near the back of the estate. After forcing the door open, they entered what appeared to be a study. Hidden drawers contained peculiar collections, scrapbooks of news clippings, photographs of children at the ranch, and letters written in shaky handwriting. The explorers described a sense of being intruders, not just in a home, but in someone's troubled psyche. The room offered glimpses into Jackson's paranoia, his desire to control his image, and his fascination with youth. Abandonment and secrecy. Even the outdoor spaces carried their own brand of unease. The theme park rides sat frozen in time, rust creeping along their rails. The 4-acre lake was murky, reflecting only fragments of the decaying estate. The echoes of laughter that once filled these grounds seemed replaced with an eerie stillness, amplifying the ranch's aura of abandonment and secrecy. The door knocker. When the group finally left, the door knocker's design once again caught their eye. What had seemed like a curious oddity hours earlier now felt symbolic, a warning about the strange and disturbing contrasts of Neverland. What was built to be a dreamlike escape ended up carrying the weight of whispers, rumors, and shadows that no amusement park could hide. Neverland was not just Michael Jackson's playground, it was his mirror, and for those who dared to enter, the reflection was far darker than they ever imagined. Unsettling figures in the shadows of Neverland. The group saw unexplainable statues, each more unnerving than the last. One in particular stood out, a life-sized cowboy child holding a teddy bear, frozen in time as though waiting for playmates who would never arrive. Nearby, a demonic-looking sculpture crouched ominously, guarding a magazine defaced with doodles that gave it the appearance of a devil. These bizarre artifacts blurred the line between playfulness and darkness, raising disturbing questions about the symbolism embedded within Neverland Ranch. But perhaps the most jarring of all were the realistic mannequins of children scattered throughout the property like silent sentinels. The atmosphere grew heavy. As the explorers moved from room to room, the atmosphere grew heavier. The statues were not simply decorative, they seemed to have been chosen with deliberate intent, each carrying a strange message. The cowboy child, meant to evoke innocence and strength, felt unsettling in its scale and stillness. Its teddy bear, clutched tightly in cold resin hands, suggested comfort, yet in the dim light, it seemed more like an object of eerie fixation. The twisted layers of Neverland. The demonic sculpture was even more disturbing. Perched menacingly, it loomed over the defaced magazine as though protecting it. The devilish doodles on the pages gave the impression of mockery, or perhaps obsession. To the group, it seemed like an omen, as if the statue's grotesque grin dared them to look deeper into the twisted layers of Neverland's design. What purpose could such an object serve in a place meant to be a paradise for children? The unsettled stillness. Then came the mannequins. Positioned in hallways, corners, and even sitting on couches, they bore uncanny resemblance to real children. Some were dressed in casual clothing, while others wore costumes, but all shared the same lifeless stares that followed the explorers as they walked past. At times, the mannequins were arranged as if mid-play, holding toys, reading books, or gazing out of windows. The effect was haunting, transforming the house into a surreal tableau where innocence was frozen in unsettling stillness. Decorations, or symbolical. The group debated whether these mannequins were simply eccentric decorations or symbolic placeholders for something far more disturbing. To some, they suggested Jackson's attempt to recreate perpetual childhood, a way to surround himself with the presence of youth even in solitude. To others, their placement hinted at something more sinister, as though the mannequins served as a silent witness to secrets the mansion still held. A distorted reflection. The deeper they wandered, the more the explorers felt trapped in a distorted reflection of childhood. The whimsical amusement park rides and playful decor outside contrasted sharply with the eerie figures inside. What was meant to be joyous, instead, exuded unease, as though innocence itself had been manipulated into something grotesque. A haunting contradiction. By the time they left, the statues and mannequins lingered in their minds far more than the rides or zoo ever could. They were not just decorations, but emblems of a haunting contradiction, a place celebrated as a wonderland that instead projected shadows of obsession, secrecy, and unease. Neverland was supposed to embody laughter and dreams, but the figures scattered across its grounds told another story, a story that chilled those who dared to uncover it. The disturbing layers of a painting. From the first look at this oil painting, you might believe it to be a heartwarming scene. Michael Jackson surrounded by children, his familiar smile radiating joy as he leads them into what seems like a world of laughter. At a glance, the canvas appears to capture the very essence of Jackson's public persona, the king of pop as a giver of happiness, a guardian of innocence, and a champion of childhood wonder. Yet on closer inspection, the image begins to shift. The parade of children he leads does not resemble a spontaneous celebration, but rather a carefully orchestrated procession into his personal realm. And in that world, fun may have carried a meaning far more troubling than playful amusement. A disguised warning. The painting's composition invites unease. Jackson stands at the center, the clear focal point, holding his hand out to guide the children. Their faces, rendered with exaggerated innocence, seem almost vacant, their eyes following him without question. The background, bright, whimsical, and filled with playful imagery, should provide comfort, yet instead it creates a dissonance. The cheerfulness feels forced, as though masking something deeper. To the group of explorers who uncovered this artwork in the mansion, the painting felt less like a portrait of joy and more like a warning disguised in color. The trap. Symbolism saturates every corner of the canvas. The children's uniformity, their expressions of blind trust, suggest submission rather than freedom. Jackson's placement as the leader, elevated above them, seems to reflect a dynamic of control. Even the supposed world of fun painted in the background, roller coasters, balloons, candy stalls, takes on a sinister quality when juxtaposed with the implication that the children have no choice but to follow. It is a carnival that seems more like a trap than a playground. Manipulation, secrecy, and control. For the explorers, the painting became more than a piece of art. It was a psychological puzzle. Was it a self-portrait of Jackson's idealized role as a bringer of happiness, or an unconscious confession of his controversial impulses? The ambiguity was unnerving. Some believed it was a reflection of Jackson's yearning to be forever connected with children, to immortalize the innocence he both idolized and claimed to protect. Others saw it as a chilling reinforcement of accusations long whispered about Neverland, that behind the facade of amusement lay manipulation, secrecy, and control. A silent storyteller. The painting's unsettling undertone was heightened by its setting. Hanging on the wall of a dimly lit corridor, it seemed to watch over the house itself, its imagery echoing the larger contradictions of Neverland Ranch. Just as the estate projected joy while concealing shadows, the painting promised happiness while hinting at something darker. When the group finally moved on, they could not shake the feeling that the artwork was more than decorative. It was symbolic. It captured the central paradox of Michael Jackson's world. A man who built an empire around the concept of childhood wonder, yet left behind a legacy clouded by suspicion. The painting became a silent storyteller, one that whispered not of innocence, but of illusions. Neverland may have been designed as paradise, but in that oil painting, paradise looked strangely like captivity. Curious and unsettling. Entering the Neverland wasn't free for all. The group took a photo of an old cash register, which was formerly used for adult ticketing. It had an intriguing image of Michael Jackson as an alien overlord, and we couldn't hide the fact that the children who had Michael Jackson's invitation were the only ones free of charge. Strange, isn't it? This scene, both curious and unsettling, captures the layered reality of Neverland, a place designed to dazzle with wonder, yet riddled with paradoxes. Neverland Ranch was more than a home. It was a spectacle, a fantasy kingdom where fairy tales were brought into physical existence. Michael Jackson crafted it to be a sanctuary away from the pressures of stardom, an escape into childlike imagination. The cash register, with its peculiar image, serves as a metaphor for that tension, the blending of commerce, control, and fantastical imagery. On the surface, the alien overlord depiction might seem whimsical, even humorous, yet it also hints at Jackson's self-fashioning as a larger-than-life figure, someone both adored and feared, both inviting and untouchable. Fundamentally designed for children. The exclusivity of entrance, children being admitted without cost, adds another layer to this narrative. It reinforces the idea that Neverland was fundamentally designed for children, not adults. To Michael, they were the only guests who could fully understand and embrace the innocence, joy, and magic he wanted to preserve. Yet the very restriction on adult entry raises questions. Why the insistence on separating the worlds so strictly? What did Jackson want to protect, and what did he want to shield from scrutiny? These questions continue to shape how Neverland is remembered. The act of photographing the cash register is significant. It is an attempt to document not merely the object, but the contradiction it represents. A cash register, after all, is a symbol of transaction, of cost, of barriers to entry. Yet in the context of Neverland, it becomes a relic of a divided access, adults on one side, children on the other. The image of Jackson looming as an alien overlord adds another surreal layer, suggesting both authority and strangeness. This wasn't just a playground, it was a domain with rules dictated by its creator. It reflected Michael Jackson himself. The contradictions of Neverland reflect Michael Jackson himself. He was an artist of immense genius and a man of deep personal complexity. His desire to create an environment of pure joy stood side by side with decisions that baffled outsiders. For admirers, Neverland was a magical kingdom where imagination triumphed over reality. For critics, it was a troubling sign of isolation and blurred boundaries. The cash register, mundane yet symbolically rich, becomes a portal into those conflicting interpretations. In the end, entering Neverland was not a simple affair. It demanded more than a ticket. It required stepping into Jackson's world, a place where fantasy and reality intermingled, where innocence and spectacle collided. The children may have entered free of charge, but all who crossed its gates paid a price, whether in wonder, in confusion, or in the unease of confronting its contradictions. Neverland remains both enchanting and unsettling, a place that continues to evoke fascination long after its gates have closed. The realistic face masks. But the group almost flipped when their eyes landed on these incredible realistic face masks displayed inside a glass box. The mask resembled none other than Michael Jackson's face with 3 different expressions. As bizarre as it seemed, the measured value of these masks was over $600. What made the moment striking was not just the mask's uncanny realism, but also the unsettling symbolism they carried. Each expression felt like a fragment of Jackson's inner world, suspended in time, inviting both awe and discomfort. The masks captured more than just a likeness. They seemed to echo Jackson's lifelong performance of identity. Known for his constant reinventions, musically, stylistically, and even physically, Jackson lived in a perpetual state of transformation. To see his face replicated and encased was to encounter a metaphor for the way he presented himself to the world, always shifting, never static. The 3 expressions might have represented joy, melancholy, and mystery, but together they formed a composite of the man who spent his life balancing public adoration with private struggles. The enhanced wonder of Neverland. The glass case amplified the strangeness. It was not only a means of preservation, but also a barrier, reminding viewers that Jackson could be admired, but never fully accessed. Behind the glass, the masks radiated a theatrical energy, like props from a surreal stage play. For some, this may have enhanced the wonder of Neverland, a reminder that it was as much a performance space as it was a home. For others, however, the sight triggered unease, as though Jackson's very essence had been turned into a collectible artifact. The price tag of $600 added yet another layer of complexity. While it underscored the commodification of Jackson's image, it also spoke to the strangeness of value itself within the world he created. What exactly was being sold here? A piece of art? A piece of memorabilia? or a piece of the performer's soul. To admirers, owning such an item might have felt like possessing a shard of magic. To skeptics, it could be read as a troubling reminder of how Jackson's identity was perpetually consumed by others, whether through music, tabloids, or objects like these. The complicated man behind it. The group's strong reaction to the masks was natural. In a place filled with whimsical rides, lush gardens, and fairy tale decor, this display cut differently. It forced viewers to think not just about Neverland's fantasy, but also about the complicated man behind it. The masks reminded them that Michael Jackson was never one thing. He was joy and sorrow, light and shadow, confidence and vulnerability, all at once. And in crafting Neverland, he left clues to this duality in unexpected corners like a glass box filled with faces. Ultimately, the masks stand as powerful symbols of Michael Jackson's life. They are unsettling, yet captivating, strange, yet telling. They remind us that behind the spectacle of Neverland was a man who understood both the magic of performance and the burden of living within a face that everyone thought they knew. In the stillness of the glass box, Jackson's many identities gazed back, leaving visitors to wonder which, if any, reflected the real him. The plastic object. One member of the group picked up an item lying on the cold floor. In a matter of seconds, he immediately recognized the plastic object. Moonwalker, the member mumbled. It was a video game released in 1990, and oddly enough, the game's objective was to help Michael Jackson save children from the evil antagonist called Mr. Big. The artist really loved any kind of concept about children, huh? That single discovery spoke volumes about Jackson's worldview, his obsessions, and the themes he wove into his art. The Moonwalker game was more than just a piece of entertainment. It was a mirror of Jackson's carefully constructed image. In it, he played the role of a savior, rescuing children from danger and embodying a kind of fantastical heroism. To stumble upon this relic on the cold floor of Neverland was to stumble into Jackson's imagination itself. For visitors, it was a reminder of how deeply he invested in childlike narratives of good and evil, protection and innocence. The fact that Jackson chose to anchor the game's central mission around children showed his desire to be seen as their guardian, a role he often emphasized in both his music and personal life. Line between performance and reality. Yet the presence of this game inside Neverland added complexity to the story. On one hand, it was whimsical, even charming, that Jackson wanted to create worlds, whether in video games, songs, or the physical landscape of Neverland, where children were central. On the other hand, it raised questions about why he so persistently circled back to this theme. For outsiders, the game could be read as an innocent fantasy of heroism. For critics, it might symbolize a fixation that blurred the lines between performance and reality. The group's reaction, recognition mixed with curiosity, reflected this duality. Here was a piece of pop culture that many remembered fondly, yet in the setting of Neverland, it acquired a different weight. The cold floor on which it lay contrasted starkly with the warm, joyous fantasy the game once promised. It was as if the artifact had slipped out of its intended world of arcade lights and childhood laughter, only to rest silently as a relic of Jackson's complicated legacy. A protector of innocence. The antagonist, Mr. Big, loomed large in the game's narrative, representing the forces of corruption and danger from which Jackson believed children needed saving. To cast himself as the lone figure who could rescue them was not just a design choice, it was an extension of the mythology Jackson built around himself. He wanted to be remembered not merely as an entertainer, but as a protector of innocence, a figure larger than life who fought against darker powers. This sense of mission permeated his art, his speeches, and his creative projects. In the end, finding Moonwalker at Neverland was more than stumbling upon an old video game cartridge. It was uncovering a symbolic artifact of Jackson's psyche. It spoke to his relentless pursuit of childlike wonder, his self-image as a guardian, and the contradictions that defined his legacy. Like much of Neverland itself, the object inspired both fascination and unease, leaving visitors to wonder whether they were encountering a playful fantasy or a deeper reflection of the man who created it. A huge fan of Home Alone. Michael Jackson was very verbal about being a huge fan of Home Alone, but it wasn't the general movie because he particularly admired Macaulay Culkin, the leading child protagonist from Home Alone. So it wasn't a surprise when the group stumbled upon his collection of movie merchandise. It was pretty normal at first. However, the group unlocked his secret closet and discovered more items that were far from being an average fanboy. What they uncovered reflected not only Jackson's admiration for the film, but also his deeper fascination with the innocence of childhood and its cultural symbols. The initial sight of the merchandise seemed harmless: posters, figurines, DVDs, and themed clothing that any dedicated fan might collect. But as the closet doors opened further, it became clear that this was no ordinary collection. There were life-size cutouts of Culkin, rare production memorabilia, and personal notes referencing Home Alone. Each item seemed to be carefully preserved, suggesting that Jackson's connection to the film went beyond casual admiration. For him, the movie represented more than slapstick comedy. It embodied themes of childhood resilience, imagination, and independence, all qualities Jackson revered. His stolen childhood. This fascination made sense in the broader context of Jackson's life. He often spoke of his stolen childhood, burdened by fame and responsibilities far beyond his years. Films like Home Alone, and particularly characters like Kevin McAllister, offered him a fantasy of the childhood freedom he longed for. Through Kevin, Jackson could project an idealized version of youth, playful, mischievous, yet ultimately triumphant. The memorabilia was not just a collection, it was a portal to a world Jackson wanted to inhabit. The secret closet, however, introduced an unsettling undertone. To outsiders, the sheer scale of his Home Alone obsession might seem excessive. It hinted at how Jackson blurred the boundaries between fantasy and reality. Was it an innocent attempt to reclaim what he had lost, or did it reveal a more troubling fixation? The group's shock at the discovery reflected this ambiguity. What appeared whimsical at first soon raised questions about how Jackson curated his private world and what it revealed about his psyche. The child-centered fantasies. The closeted nature of the collection also suggested secrecy, a desire to conceal just how deeply he immersed himself in these child-centered fantasies. While publicly he could be open about his admiration for Home Alone, the hidden room hinted at a need to protect or perhaps even shield the intensity of that connection. It was both a sanctuary and a confession, telling a story that words alone could not capture. Ultimately, the discovery of Jackson's Home Alone shrine illuminated the complex interplay between his personal identity and the symbols of childhood he cherished. For him, Kevin McAllister wasn't just a movie character. He was an emblem of the freedom, innocence, and imagination Jackson yearned for. The closet revealed not just a fan's admiration, but a deeper truth about a man who lived on the boundary between fantasy and reality. In that secret room, Jackson's longing for the childhood he'd never fully experienced lingered, preserved alongside the artifacts of a film that captured his heart. The chilling moment. When the group swung the closet door open, they immediately felt goosebumps all over their bodies, because there was a framed photo of 11-year-old Macaulay and his painting found stashed inside the cabinet of Michael Jackson. The moment was chilling, not only because of what was discovered, but also because of what it suggested: the intensity of Jackson's connection to symbols of childhood and the way he enshrined them in his private world. At first glance, the framed photo might have appeared to be nothing more than a memento of friendship. Michael Jackson and Macaulay Culkin were known to share a close bond in the early 1990s, a relationship Jackson himself often described as pure and childlike. To see an image of Culkin at 11, preserved so carefully, could be interpreted as a simple gesture of affection. Yet in the context of a hidden closet, the act of concealing it lent the discovery a far more mysterious and haunting aura. The complexity of the scene. The addition of a painting alongside the photograph deepened the complexity of the scene. Art has always carried symbolic weight, and in Jackson's world, paintings often served as vehicles for his imagination, fantasies, and emotional expressions. The fact that a painting of Culkin, or perhaps by him, was tucked away with a photograph suggested that this was no casual keepsake. It was a curated pairing, an intentional act of preservation that blurred the line between fan admiration, personal attachment, and symbolic meaning. The group's reaction, goosebumps, unease, even confusion, was telling. Neverland was filled with whimsy, grandeur, and eccentricities, yet this discovery stood apart. Unlike roller coasters or arcade games, a secret photo and painting carried a deeply personal quality. It felt private, almost sacred, as though the items represented something Jackson wanted to keep shielded from the spectacle of the outside world. The secrecy was as much a part of the meaning as the artifacts themselves. Playful and mischievous. The photo of an 11-year-old Culkin held particular resonance. Culkin was, at that time, the embodiment of childhood stardom, playful, mischievous, and beloved worldwide for Home Alone. In preserving that image, Jackson may have been preserving not just a friend, but an ideal, the purest form of childhood innocence, untouched by the pressures and traumas he himself experienced as a young star. The painting reinforced this idea, acting as an artistic double, a reflection of the qualities Jackson yearned to embrace and protect. However, to outside observers, the concealment of such objects naturally sparks questions. Why hide them? Why place them in a locked cabinet instead of on open display? The secrecy invites speculation about Jackson's complicated relationship with childhood, fame, and the children he surrounded himself with. It underscores the duality of Neverland, a place of wonder and play, but also of secrecy and shadows. In the end, the hidden closet was not simply a storage space, it was a symbolic chamber of Jackson's inner world. The photograph and painting of a young Macaulay Culkin revealed both his longing for innocence and the mysteries that defined his life. They embodied the paradox of Michael Jackson, a man who turned his home into a fantasy kingdom, yet kept his deepest attachments locked away, guarded by secrecy, and forever open to interpretation. A robotic head. Besides the realistic face masks, the group also came across a robotic head that looked like Michael Jackson. There was no doubt that the artist loved displaying his face everywhere. However, an amusement park wouldn't be complete without the rides, so the group made sure to take photos of these spooky abandoned bumper cars and the iconic carousel. The combination of personal imagery and forgotten attractions painted a haunting portrait of Neverland, a place once alive with music and laughter, now silenced by time. The robotic head stood out immediately. Unlike the masks, which were static and encased behind glass, this creation suggested movement, performance, and spectacle. It was as though Jackson had wanted to transform even machines into extensions of himself, immortalizing his image in every corner of his world. The head's uncanny resemblance reinforced the theme of self-mythologizing that defined Neverland. Jackson didn't just want to be present, he wanted to be omnipresent, woven into the very fabric of the fantasy land he created. The contrast between. Yet what struck the group even more than the robotic likeness were the abandoned rides. Bumper cars, once a site of joyous chaos, now sat idle in eerie silence. Rust and dust had replaced the echoes of children's laughter. The sight of them stirred a sense of melancholy, as if the spirit of Neverland had long since departed, leaving behind only shells of amusement. The contrast between their former purpose and their current condition spoke volumes about the passage of time and the fragility of constructed dreams. The carousel, however, carried a particularly symbolic weight. Once the centerpiece of many amusement parks, it represented innocence, nostalgia, and timeless fun. At Neverland, the carousel had been iconic, a symbol of Jackson's devotion to childlike wonder. But now, in its abandoned state, it stood as a haunting monument. Its painted horses and ornate decorations, though faded, still hinted at the grandeur of the past. To photograph it was to capture the essence of Neverland's transformation, from a kingdom of imagination to a ghostly relic. The contradiction of MJ's world. Together, the robotic head and the abandoned rides encapsulated the contradictions of Michael Jackson's world. On one side was the self-idolatry, the endless reproduction of his image in masks, machines, and memorabilia. On the other was the attempt to construct a space of joy and freedom, filled with rides that mirrored the magic of childhood. Both were equally present, and both now lay in states of eerie preservation and decay. For the group, the experience of encountering these objects was unsettling but profound. They saw not only the remnants of an amusement park, but also the remnants of a man's dream. Neverland had been Jackson's refuge, his attempt to reclaim innocence and share it with others. Yet abandoned, it revealed the inevitable collapse of fantasy when separated from the energy of life. In the end, the robotic head, the bumper cars, and the carousel were more than curiosities. They were symbols of Jackson's legacy, his desire for immortality, his yearning for childhood, and the haunting reality of dreams left behind. Neverland, in silence, continued to tell his story, not through music or performance, but through relics that still carried whispers of what once was. The swimming pool. Every kid loves dipping into the pool, and Michael Jackson knew it very well. Therefore, he never missed building a swimming pool, which was also perfect during the hot Californian weather. Rumored that the pool was the area where Michael would have close interactions with his guests, the pool, sparkling and inviting, was more than just a feature of luxury. It was an extension of Jackson's vision for Neverland as a sanctuary of play, relaxation, and childhood joy. Unlike the grandeur of his amusement rides or the spectacle of his memorabilia collections, the pool represented something more elemental. Water itself symbolizes freedom, cleansing, and rebirth. By including a swimming pool at Neverland, Jackson tapped into one of the most universal childhood experiences. For many, pools are where laughter and carefree moments flourish, and Jackson's own pool was no different. It was designed not simply as an accessory of wealth, but as a place to connect, to gather, and to recapture the innocence he valued so deeply. Speculation and controversy. Yet the rumors surrounding the pool added layers of complexity to its image. Visitors often whispered that this was where Jackson interacted most closely with his young guests. While some saw this as a gesture of generosity and camaraderie, others viewed it with suspicion. Like much of Neverland, the pool carried a dual meaning, a site of genuine joy and shared experiences, but also a subject of speculation and controversy. That ambiguity has shaped the way people interpret its place in the estate's history. The design of the pool itself reflected Jackson's penchant for grandeur. Set against the backdrop of California's sunlit skies and lush Neverland grounds, the pool was both private and theatrical. It invited games, splashes, and laughter, serving as a centerpiece for summer afternoons. Guests who swam there often described it as a lively space where Jackson's playful side came alive. He was known to join in on games, delighting in water fights and playful antics that blurred the line between host and participant. Echoes of laughter. At the same time, the pool symbolized Jackson's attempt to create a world insulated from adult responsibilities. In the water, everyone became a child again. Age, fame, and status seemed to melt away, replaced by a shared sense of fun. For Jackson, who often spoke about his lost childhood, the pool may have been one of the truest expressions of his desire to relive those carefree years. It allowed him to embody the playfulness he longed for, while offering his guests a chance to escape their own realities. For the group exploring Neverland, the sight of the pool stirred mixed emotions. Its sparkling surface carried echoes of laughter, yet in the stillness of abandonment, it felt eerily silent. Like the bumper cars, carousel, and other attractions, the pool had transitioned from a place of vitality to a relic of the past. Its water, once alive with energy, now symbolized memories that could not be revived. In the end, the swimming pool of Neverland was more than just a leisure spot. It was a stage where Jackson performed his own version of childhood, mingling joy with complexity, innocence with ambiguity. Today, it remains one of the most poignant symbols of Neverland, a place where dreams once splashed freely, now remembered only through stories and whispers. The odd logo. Right after the group left the Neverland, the sceneries they saw were still playing in their heads. They couldn't help but shiver as one member recalled the odd logo of Michael Jackson's ranch. It was an image of a young boy in body-tight pajamas sitting on top of a moon. Unfortunately, there were creepier discoveries that weren't taken by their lenses. That haunting image of the boy, so whimsical on the surface, lingered with them, as though it contained a hidden story only Jackson himself could explain. The logo of Neverland was meant to capture fantasy. Much like the opening scene of a fairy tale, it suggested innocence, wonder, and an escape into imagination. Yet in the aftermath of their visit, the group began to interpret it differently. The pajama-clad boy floating on a moon was not just playful, but strangely eerie. It highlighted Jackson's fascination with childhood imagery while also provoking unease, especially when paired with the other bizarre relics they had witnessed during their tour. The unrecorded moments. Their uneasiness deepened when they recalled what they chose not to photograph. Some discoveries felt too unsettling, too intimate, as though capturing them would only amplify their disturbing power. These unrecorded moments were etched into memory instead of film, lingering like shadows that refused to dissipate. The very absence of photographs turned them into myths, fragments of memory that gained a haunting weight the more they were recalled. For the group, leaving Neverland did not mean leaving its mysteries behind. The ranch clung to them, reshaping itself in their thoughts as a place of contradiction, both wondrous and disturbing. The rides, masks, paintings, and symbols they had encountered became puzzle pieces in a larger narrative, one that blurred the line between fantasy and reality. And though they walked away, they carried with them the inescapable truth. Neverland was not just a place on a map, but a lasting imprint on the imagination, filled with beauty, strangeness, and unanswered questions. Children of the World Menu. The group saw the menu displayed on the counters of the kitchen. Michael Jackson named it Children of the World Menu, which was obviously meant for the kids. The food selection was written on a chalkboard with peanut butter and jelly sandwich designs. It was too enticing for the children not to grab a bite. But why did Michael Jackson intend his home only for the children? That simple menu, both playful and inviting, revealed a deeper truth about Jackson's vision for Neverland. Food is never just about nourishment. It is about community, comfort, and culture. By designing a menu centered around children, Jackson was extending his vision of Neverland as a sanctuary where innocence and joy could reign. The chalkboard menu, with its whimsical peanut butter and jelly illustrations, was more than decoration. It was a signal. It said clearly, "This is a place where children come first." Every detail, even the food, reflected his desire to craft an environment where young guests felt celebrated. Adults were not the primary audience. Yet the exclusivity of the menu also raised questions. Adults, it seemed, were not the primary audience for Neverland. Jackson's persistent focus on children often sparked curiosity and suspicion. Was this menu simply a charming reflection of his longing to recreate a childhood he never had? Or was it part of a more complicated narrative? The absence of adult-centered offerings highlighted how thoroughly Jackson built his world around the young, leaving visitors to interpret his intentions in varied ways. For the group, the menu was simultaneously sweet and unsettling. On one level, it made sense. What child wouldn't delight in sandwiches, cookies, and milkshakes? On another level, the very act of tailoring a household menu so strictly toward children underscored how unusual Neverland truly was. It blurred the line between a family home and a fantasy land designed exclusively for youthful delight. In the end, the Children of the World menu was more than a playful chalkboard. It was a window into Michael Jackson's heart and mind, a reminder of his relentless pursuit of childhood joy and the complex legacy of the world he created. The Strange Mirrors. They also bumped into strange mirrors. These glasses were around the mansion, and the group would usually find them next to a Roman statue. But it wasn't just ordinary mirrors, because these glasses were mounted on 4-foot by 4-foot platforms. Still, a mystery the group left unsolved. The mirrors added yet another puzzling layer to the strange aura that surrounded the Neverland estate. Unlike typical decorative mirrors used for vanity or interior design, these were placed almost theatrically. Their unusual size and positioning suggested they had a purpose beyond mere reflection. Mounted on large platforms and stationed near Roman statues, the mirrors created a sense of ritualistic staging, as though they were deliberately meant to evoke an experience rather than serve a practical function. Visitors could not help but wonder whether Jackson intended them to represent portals to another world or simply tools for playful illusion. Illusions and reflections. The group debated among themselves. Some speculated the mirrors were part of Jackson's fascination with stagecraft and performance, a way of bringing elements of his concert magic into his home. After all, illusions and reflections were cornerstones of entertainment, and Jackson was a master of spectacle. Others, however, viewed them as oddities, symbols of a deeper eccentricity, or even an attempt to distort perception in ways that blurred reality and fantasy. The Roman statues beside them only heightened the enigma. Classical art paired with massive mirrors hinted at a clash of eras where timelessness and modern artifice collided. Was Jackson drawing a connection between ancient grandeur and contemporary imagination? Or were these placements purely aesthetic, the product of a whimsical mind unconcerned with explanation? In the end, the strange mirrors stood as silent witnesses to Jackson's peculiar design of Neverland. They reflected not just the visitors' faces, but the haunting realization that the estate itself was an unsolvable puzzle. Each object, each carefully chosen detail, offered a glimpse into his world while simultaneously deepening the mystery. The mirrors became metaphors, symbols of reflection, distortion, and unanswered questions that lingered long after the group had left. Friction between fascination. From an interview, the group admitted that they felt uncomfortable not just because of the eerie atmosphere of the ranch, but also because they were aware that their group was breaking into someone's property. It was so compelling to do it. I couldn't go in because the opportunity was there, but at the same time, it just felt wrong. It was this constant friction between fascination and, I've got to get out of here, I shouldn't be in here, stated by one of the members. Then the truth dawned on them when the group attempted to visit Michael Jackson's bedroom. The ranch had already presented them with enough bizarre discoveries, strange masks, abandoned rides, and unsettling statues, but the idea of entering Jackson's private quarters carried a different weight. Bedrooms are the most intimate part of any home, and stepping into his felt like crossing a sacred boundary. The group hesitated, their excitement dampened by a creeping sense of guilt and foreboding. Jackson's controversial history. It was not just about the thrill anymore. The eerie stillness of the estate combined with their knowledge of Jackson's controversial history made the moment almost unbearable. The bedroom symbolized more than privacy. It carried the weight of scandals, rumors, and countless unanswered questions. To step inside meant confronting not only the memory of the artist, but also the darker shadows that surrounded his name. Some members admitted that the temptation was overwhelming, driven by curiosity and the desire to uncover what others had not seen. Yet others were paralyzed by conscience, realizing that their intrusion was an act of violation. That tug-of-war between curiosity and morality became the defining experience of their visit. Ultimately, the attempted entry into the bedroom highlighted the uncomfortable truth. The line between exploration and exploitation was thinner than they had anticipated. Neverland was not simply a theme park frozen in time. It was a place that embodied both wonder and unease, a reflection of its owner's complex legacy. And for the group, the experience became less about discovery and more about confronting their own limits in the face of an irresistible but forbidden mystery. The unsettling discovery. Michael Jackson's room was wide open. However, some doors were tightly locked. And according to one member, one other interesting thing, we did go in Michael's room, but both of the kids' rooms were locked from the outside. The discovery immediately unsettled them. Why would children's rooms need locks on the outside? The detail carried an ominous undertone, a design choice that suggested control rather than protection. Though tempted to see what was inside, the group decided not to force a break-in. Their instincts told them that something about those secured rooms wasn't right. That decision, as it turned out, was a wise one. A year later, a documentary film surfaced, one that peeled back the layers of Jackson's Neverland and exposed disturbing allegations. The locked doors suddenly took on a chilling new significance. What the group had once brushed off as a strange architectural quirk now appeared as evidence of something far darker. It was as if the house itself had been hiding secrets all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. Unspoken Horrors. The documentary brought to light testimonies and accounts that unsettled even the most devoted fans. For the group who had seen the rooms firsthand, the film validated their unease. The memory of those padlocked doors now haunted them with the possibility that they had stood at the threshold of rooms where unspoken horrors occurred. The ranch, already eerie with its abandoned rides and strange memorabilia, now carried an even heavier weight in their minds. In retrospect, the group's exploration of Neverland became more than an act of curiosity. It became a chilling brush with truth, a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved by intruders, but revealed by time and testimony. The locked rooms stood as symbols of secrecy, and the later revelations proved that their instincts had been correct. Neverland was more than an abandoned fantasy land. It was a stage where dreams and nightmares tragically collided. Leaving Neverland. A recent documentary film in 2019 called Leaving Neverland sparked the controversies of Michael Jackson once again, but in a deeper context. The children who had been into his ranch claimed that there were actually secret rooms and one-way mirrors. However, no one could still confirm if all of these were true, as the artist strongly denied all the allegations before he died in 2009. The film went beyond tabloid speculation, offering detailed testimonies from individuals who claimed to have lived within the walls of Neverland. Their accounts described an environment that was not only fantastical, but also shrouded in secrecy, with architecture designed to conceal rather than reveal. The imagery of secret chambers and one-way mirrors left audiences unsettled, reinforcing suspicions about what may have occurred behind closed doors. Yet controversy remains deeply entwined with the narrative. While critics argued that the testimonies were compelling and consistent, supporters of Jackson pointed out the absence of conclusive physical evidence. They argued that the allegations surfaced years after the supposed events, making them difficult to verify. The divide between belief and doubt became sharper, further polarizing public opinion about the legacy of one of pop culture's most influential figures. The uncomfortable duality. What makes Leaving Neverland so impactful is not just its allegations, but the way it forced audiences to confront the uncomfortable duality of Jackson's life. On one hand, he was a global icon who redefined music and performance, inspiring millions. On the other, the testimony suggested a darker reality that challenged the innocence projected by his art. The existence or non-existence of secret rooms and hidden passages became symbols of that duality, representing both the magic and the mystery of his world. Ultimately, the documentary left more questions than answers. The debate over Jackson's innocence or guilt may never be fully resolved, but Leaving Neverland ensured that the shadow of Neverland would continue to loom large, serving as a haunting reminder of how truth can sometimes remain locked away, just like the doors of the ranch itself. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more similar content. Thank you.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon